Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello everyone and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? Moving along, Trump's made it back into the news. Well, I don't know if he ever leaves really, but it's been a while since we've talked about it, so it's good to check in again. A lot's happened, I guess, since the last time we spoke about him. There was the shutdown. There was all these Democrats announcing their candidacy for the president for 2020, and now. And amongst all that, there's the Mueller probe that's apparently wrapping up and seemingly going somewhere. There was the indictment of Roger Stone doing his Nixon thing on the courthouse steps. It's just, just when they just keep adding these juicy episodes to the reality TV show of the Trump presidency. And I guess somewhere to start with is this idea of Donald Trump and his plans for the 2020 candidates that have come out from the Democrats, which is to cause chaos and division amongst them. But what I find interesting, just to kick off on, is that with all of this stuff that's going on and swirling on around him, he's more than keen to jump in there to go up and battle these people in the court of public opinion and do his, on-camera shtick to battle these people. And it's interesting that that's where his attention is focused with all of the stuff that's going on at the moment. But we shouldn't really be surprised given the sort of narcissistic take he takes on a lot of things.
No, just one observation. I don't know if it's just me taking a bit of a break over summer, but he appears to be getting less screen time. So it's not like he's spending less time in the headlines, as you say. When does he ever leave? But he seems to be taking less screen time. So I don't know if that's something conscious or not.
Or surely the media wouldn't be thinking, we got to give him less at this point.
Well, I don't know. I would think maybe, his media people maybe are pulling back on his public appearances, but he's making more announcements, or just the same number of abrasive and very forthright announcements, trying to pull the Democrats out of the woodwork.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and we've seen now, I think, 4 Democratic nominations?
I think it's more now. And I think one of the interesting things is that he plans to use the term socialism and communism against them, and he seems to think that he's like basically it's suggesting here that he's praying for, if he did pray, for a candidate that is as far left as possible. So like he'd love to run up against Bernie again, so that he can label him a socialist. And I find that interesting that is considered an advantage. Like for all the talk that Americans are against socialism, they've got a lot of socialist programs going on. It's just that, it's kind of like, I don't want socialism, but don't take away my Medicare kind of thing. It's a very odd dynamic that's going on there. And the fact that he thinks that he can use that is quite fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. And I would think that, anyone who goes the opposite of Trump would probably lose. What I would think would make more sense is just a more measured approach from the Democrats, less hysteria about Trump and more positivity about what they might achieve. I think anyone who takes Trump on is headed for trouble, because he's such a powerful personality. And if you fight him, the people that don't like him but like what he stands for will back him. And that's the issue.
So just on those candidates then, what is the plan then? Them going out and like being like Bernie in that sense, like, because it's not just Bernie this time. There's quite a few of them that are following that platform. And is it just enough for them to go out and really hammer these ideas out and really believe in it? I would have thought that there has to be an element of this where they are just going to have to whack him back on the head in a debate or something like that to really sort of appear strong, because the whole thing is Trump respects people that do exactly what he does in that respect.
I'm cynical about this, but I believe guys like Bernie Sanders are, quite genuine. However, I believe that the popularity, and this has been demonstrated for a guy like Bernie Sanders, is much more amongst the younger demographic. And what Bernie says appeals to them, appeals to the modern, idea of equality of, opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I don't have any issue with that. But I do think that the tone on the left-hand side is, they're running their little focus groups. They're thinking, how do we activate, a whole generation of voters that will not be just with us for this election, but for all the ones coming forward. And so suddenly that chasm is widening, and Trump is adding fuel to that fire. Yeah. So, Trump stands probably for everything that a 20-something, disagrees with. So, and that's what I'm cynical about is the motivation to move politics to this sort of anti-Trump level. And I just think that, a really clever and charismatic person who didn't agree with Trump but focused on, being positive and what could be achieved together would do a lot better than fighting Trump or sprouting policies that are just, polarised or opposed to what he's saying. I'd totally disregard him and take away his power.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me wonder, though, that there's this argument that they could, someone that's a bit more further on the left would make it through a primary, for instance, but they wouldn't do as well in the general election because that person might be able to speak to those young people that you're talking about, but they can't speak to the people who are a bit more down the line and are only worried about bread and butter type issues. Hence the reason why Clinton lost last time, which is that was the argument there.
That's right.
In looking at some of that, so someone like Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or any of those people might go through that first part, but it's someone like Amy Klobuchar, someone I'm watching actually, because she, even though it's been reported that she's quite tough on her staff, and that's putting it mildly, in terms of her management style. If you actually watch her speak, she seems more like that sort of older school, not older school in the sense, she's still kind of got a modern sensibility to her, but she's a lot more moderate in what she's saying. So instead of
as opposed to anti-Trump opinions.
So she's actually gone out and stated publicly, for instance, that unlike Bernie, who wants tuition-free college and sort of like free healthcare, she basically has gone out and said, I want as much as possible, but there's no way we're going to be able to afford that to be completely free. But we'll figure out ways to make it as easy as possible, which is a lot more of a moderate view of how to do it. So I'm actually going to watch her and see how far she gets, because it would seem that she's, to me, coming across as, she's got the vibe, so to speak, compared to some of the others. Bernie, I've got a lot of time for his ideas and everything, but I just wonder if his time's passed, especially considering there are so many other candidates at the moment that are effectively replicating his position now, whereas he had the lane to himself last time.
His election was the last election, unfortunately, and I think Hillary cruelled him on that. And then didn't make the most of the opportunity.
And I would think that with the same types of ideas coming through a younger candidate and even maybe perhaps a female candidate, which would probably be a good answer to the Trump presidency at this point, they might be better served going down that route.
I agree. And I wonder, will Hillary make an announcement right towards the very end of the nominations? I wonder.
They should pass legislation against that or something to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, we'll just switch gears momentarily since we are looking at Trump. All this stuff about the latest in the investigation, the Russia investigation, etc. There's been actually quite a bit of good commentary now that basically all the people around him are starting to fall. Well, not all, but a lot of them are. And when we say all, we're talking about the long-time associates, Roger Stone being the latest one. And there's a narrative now basically suggesting that how is it that all of these guys who have been so close to Trump all of this time, they're getting done for everything that they've done, and how is it that Trump is just sitting there and he wouldn't know anything about it?
Well, it's interesting. If he was an Olympic athlete, he'd be guilty because you don't have to prove drug taking. You just have to infer it And certainly you could infer from this that he must be guilty, but without any hard evidence or smoking guns, or although maybe there are lots of smoking guns but no bullets, I don't know. It's hard to...
So all those years of him not using emails have come into, or text messaging, from what I hear, has come into its advantage for him.
I think there's a lesson in that for everyone.
Absolutely. We may hear a bit more about this soon, because apparently the Mueller report is due any time now. But what's interesting is that Mueller and his team have been pretty smart about the fact that they've deferred a whole bunch of the case off to state lawyers, or the state districts, basically to get around the pardon power of the president. So it seems like a pretty tight, clever operation, and the way it plays itself out, hopefully we'll see a little bit of that starting to come out this year.
Yeah, I agree, and we'll see where that takes us. I mean, even that still is unclear. You know, once again, you can see a certain path emerging, but we've seen that many paths or trains derailed so far. We'll have to wait and see.
Teflon Don, as they call him. All right, just one last topic, careening across the pond over to London and the UK, because it's hard not to think of what the politics of Donald Trump and Brexit in the UK, even though they're different things, of course. But there was a lot going on in Brexit land between now and our last episodes on the topic, and the fact that, you know, it's looking likely that the UK could careen towards a no Brexit deal, or no deal Brexit, I should say. And what does that mean? There's, I think John Oliver called it, it's like the citizens of Pompeii voting to be inside the volcano when it erupts. It could be okay, but, you know, it might not be that good. But it's interesting that how this is playing out, or even the fact that couldn't they just go back and say, all right, we're not going to do it because it's too catastrophic, but they don't want the voters to turn against them? It's an interesting political dynamic.
Oh, look, you know, once again, I think this has been very badly handled, and I'll be cynical once again. I think the reality is you could have had a no-deal Brexit if they'd been planning for it for the last 2 years. And I think also, you know, the reality is that it's only about the flow of money. That's what the real argument is, and there's all sorts of other things thrown in. And I just think, you know, probably from a British point of view, you know, from a politician's point of view, and I do understand it, but, you know, take a step out. Life will go on. The person living in a flat somewhere in the UK will still be living in a flat after, you know, Brexit. The question is what happens at political level, and they're getting a knickers and a twist over it, and really, I think, dropping the ball, whichever way you look at it, whether they should go for a deal or not go for a deal. You know, it doesn't make any difference to a person on the street in that first week. What matters for the country is that, or both sides, is that it's a positive experience. It's going to happen, so make it positive. Instead, they're arguing politics. And they're doing it quite badly because they're not equipped to understand it from a real world perspective.
All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our YouTube, Vimeo channels, our RSS feeds, and listen to us on any devices you have. And we appreciate taking the time out to listen to us and visiting our website. We greatly appreciate it. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.